everyone, welcome to these super short quick tips revision videos for our upcoming tests after Easter. So this is for chemistry paper 1 and we're talking about acids, bases and salts. So you should know that there are 3 types of strong acid and know their formulas: hydrochloric, nitric and sulfuric. And from these acids, when we neutralize them with compounds called bases, we make a new chemical called a salt. So bases are a set of chemicals that neutralize acids, and an example would be copper oxide. Mostly bases are metal oxides. If the metal oxide dissolves in water, then we can give the base a special name and call it an alkali. An example of an alkali would be sodium Na hydroxide OH. So we can say that all alkalis are bases, but not all bases are alkalis. A salt is a chemical that's made when an acid and a base react, and the name of the salt is always made up of a metal joined onto the part of the acid that isn't the hydrogen. So this name section depends on the type of acid. An example of a salt that you will have made is copper sulfate. So with our 3 acids, and notice that all of them have hydrogen, and acidness is defined as how concentrated the hydrogen ions are in a solution. And we can think of alkalis as being this ion, which is called hydroxide. When hydrogen from an acid reacts with hydroxide from an alkali, they join together and make H2O, water. So you're basically saying water is half acid and half alkali, and that's why water is neutral, has a pH of 7. Okay, so let's go further with our neutralizations, and let's talk about what happens when specific acids are neutralized. If we neutralize hydrochloric acid, this part of the name determines our salt. So the salts are going to be chlorides, something chloride, and this will be a metal. If we neutralize nitric acid, we will make something nitrate. And if we neutralize sulfuric acid, the salt will have the name of something sulfate. So you will have neutralized acid with copper oxide, and if we neutralize these acids with copper oxide, CuO, if all of them react with copper oxide, we know that all of the salts will start with the name copper. Copper chloride if I use hydrochloric acid, copper nitrate if I use nitric acid, and copper sulfate if I use sulfuric acid. Copper oxide is an example of an insoluble base, so we can always know that we've neutralized the acid by adding excess and then filtering away the excess copper oxide. Okay, so let's talk about the required practical. So we might end up with questions that introduce you to this practical, and you will all have done this at some point in school. You will have taken an acid. We probably use sulfuric acid. you will have added to the acid copper oxide, which is a base and is an insoluble base. And to help this reaction, because it's quite slow, we would have warmed up the acid with the copper oxide in and stirred it so that the copper oxide and sulfuric acid can react faster. Okay? How will we know when it's neutralized? We will know when it's neutralized because we will see in our beaker, first of all, the solution will turn blue as the copper sulfate forms, and importantly, we'll start to see unreacted copper oxide in the base of the beaker, which we can refer to as excess. This neutralization technique is called adding excess. So when I'm at this stage here, stage 2, I know that my acid has been neutralized because this copper oxide cannot react. I can see that I've got a solution of copper sulfate, and so stage 3 will be to filter this mixture with a funnel, filter paper, and I'm going to filter my mixture into an evaporating basin. The excess copper oxide will be left behind on the filter paper, and dripping through the filter will be my copper sulfate solution. I can use this state symbol AQ. So finally, if I want some dry crystals of the copper sulfate, I'm going to carefully evaporate the water by sitting my evaporating basin on top of a beaker which is being heated, so that we can gently warm up the copper sulfate solution and are left with crystals at the end.